Welcome to Rise with Affirmations, where stories and words remind you that your strength is greater than your struggle. Take a deep breath in. He used to love the sound of gloves hitting the bag, that sharp, percussive rhythm, a heartbeat echoing through the hollow space of the gym. It was the sound of progress, of power, of purpose. But lately, every punch felt heavy, like he was swinging through water. Every round felt longer, an eternity stretched between bells. And every mirror reflection felt like a question he couldn't answer. His name was Jordan. Once, he was the guy everyone believed in, the one with the lightning-fast jab and the footwork of a dancer. Now, he couldn't even believe in himself. The losses had piled up relentlessly, one after another. Not just in the ring, where the sting of defeat was sharp and public, but in the quiet corners of his life. Friends, once a roaring crowd at his ringside, had drifted away, their calls becoming less frequent. His confidence, once a fortress, had cracked and crumbled, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. He started to wonder if maybe this dream, this all-consuming passion, wasn't meant for him anymore. Maybe he was just chasing a ghost. Every morning the ritual was the same. He'd sit on the edge of the worn-out bench, lace up his gloves, and then just stare. He'd stare at the scuffed floorboards, at the dust motes dancing in the slivers of dawn light. The heavy bag would sway quietly, a silent partner waiting for a dance that never began. And he'd think, what's the point if I keep falling short? What is the point of all this sweat and sacrifice if the result is always the same? He was trapped in a loop of his own disappointment. But that morning was different. He didn't know why. Maybe it was the way the light hit the mirror, or the unusual silence in the gym. When he looked up at his reflection, a tired face staring back, he heard a quiet voice inside. It wasn't a thought. It felt like a sound. It said, "I'm still here." It startled him. The voice wasn't loud or booming. It wasn't the voice of a coach or a cheerleader. It was small, but it was steady, resolute. He found himself whispering the words out loud, his breath fogging the cool mirror. "I'm still here." Something shifted. A small, almost imperceptible change in the atmosphere of the room, or maybe just in the atmosphere of his soul. He taped his hands, one rap at a time. He focused on the simple, mechanical motion. The pull of the fabric, the secure feeling as it tightened around his knuckles. Each pull felt a little tighter, each breath a little slower, a little deeper. He stood up and stepped to the bag. He took his stance, feet planted firmly on the ground. He exhaled. And when his fist connected, the sound was different. Not the dull thud of recent weeks, but clean. Focused. It resonated, not with frustration, but with presence. He started a simple combination, jab cross hook. With each punch, he let a memory surface. He thought about all the times he'd failed, the fight he'd lost in the final round, the sponsorship that fell through, the nights he'd come home and cried in the silent darkness of his apartment, muffling the sounds in a pillow. The mornings he almost didn't get up, the weight of yesterday's failure pressing him down into the mattress. And yet somehow, he was standing here, punching, breathing. He was still here. He paused between punches, his chest heaving, and said softly to the empty gym, "I may have lost rounds, but I haven't lost heart." He trained harder that week than he had in months, but his motivation was different. He wasn't training to win a future fight. He was training to remember why he started. He was training to reclaim the joy of movement, the burn in his muscles, the feeling of being completely, utterly present in his own body. Sweat stung his eyes. Old blisters on his knuckles reopened and burned. But for the first time in a long time, he didn't care how he looked to anyone else. He only cared how he felt, and he felt alive again. One afternoon, the gym door creaked open. His old coach, a man with a face like a roadmap of hard-won battles, walked in. And he had seen him at his worst, offering a quiet word of comfort after a devastating loss. The coach didn't say much. And he had seen him at his worst, offering a quiet word of comfort after a devastating loss. The coach didn't say much. And he had seen him at his worst, offering a quiet word of comfort after a devastating loss. The coach didn't say much. Jordan at his very best, celebrating championship wins. And he had seen him at his worst, offering a quiet word of comfort after a devastating loss. The coach didn't say much. He just leaned against the wall, arms crossed, and watched. Jordan kept working the bag, his movements becoming more fluid, more powerful. When he finally stopped, gasping to catch his breath, the coach pushed off the wall and walked over. He looked Jordan in the eye, and a slow, knowing smile spread across his face. "You finally stopped fighting your doubt," he said, his voice gravelly but kind. "Now you can fight for real." Those words hit harder than any punch ever could. It was the truth he hadn't been able to see himself. All this time, his real opponent hadn't been in the opposite corner of the ring. It had been in his own head. Jordan nodded, his eyes burning with unshed tears of gratitude and realization. He whispered his new affirmation between gasps for air. "I am not defined by my defeats. I am built by them." Every round that followed became a prayer. Not a prayer to win, but a prayer to show up, to keep standing, to prove to himself that his resilience was louder than his fear. Days turned into weeks. His body transformed. It grew leaner, sharper, radiating a newfound energy. But the biggest change was in his voice. Each morning now began with a whisper that grew steadily into a confident declaration. "I am capable. I am disciplined. I am unstoppable." Fight night came. The arena was a cauldron of noise and light. The roar of the crowd was a physical force, the bright lights blinding, and his gloves felt heavy with expectation. As he walked toward the ring, he felt that old familiar tremor of fear crawl up his spine, a cold serpent of doubt. Then he closed his eyes. He took a single, deep breath, and he repeated the words that had become his anchor. "I am calm. I am ready. I am enough." Round one was chaos. His opponent was a storm of aggression, fast and relentless. Jordan stumbled early, taking a hard shot to the side of his head that made his vision blur and the world tilt. The crowd gasped. He could feel the old doubt trying to crawl back, whispering its toxic lies. But then he remembered. The mornings. The affirmations. The face in the mirror that said, "I'm still here." He steadied himself, found his footing, and when the bell rang to end the round, he smiled through the blood trickling from his lip. He knew he hadn't come here to prove anything to them, only to himself. By round 4, everything slowed down. The chaotic noise of the crowd faded into a dull hum. Every punch he threw had purpose. Every breath he took had meaning. He was no longer just a fighter. He was an artist, painting a masterpiece of resilience on the canvas of the ring. And in one perfect, cinematic moment of clarity, he saw an opening and landed a clean, powerful hit. A punch thrown not out of anger or desperation, but out of pure, focused clarity. When the final bell rang and the fight ended, he didn't even wait for the judge's decision. He raised his own gloves in a quiet, personal victory. He already knew he'd won something far bigger than this single match. Not the title, not the belt, but himself. He sat in the quiet locker room after, the chaos of the arena a distant memory. His gloves rested on his knees, heavy and still. He looked up at his reflection in the locker door, smiled softly and whispered, "I rose again." If you're watching this, take a breath with him. Inhale that feeling of victory. Think about one area of your life where you've been knocked down, where you feel counted out. Now say this with me, and really feel it. I'm not finished. I'm rising. I am built for more. Every setback you face is just strength in disguise. Every fall is a chance to rise higher than before. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to win every round. You just need to keep showing up. Welcome to your next round. Every small step matters. Every choice to rise counts. Keep showing up for yourself. Keep believing in your strength. Keep moving forward. Keep rising. If this story gave you hope or peace, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and comment below. One thing you'll rise above today. Subscribe to Rise with Affirmations for daily motivational stories and affirmations.